Hello and welcome to this Energy Connects discussion here at the 9th OPEC International Seminar in Vienna. I'm delighted to have with me for this closing wrap-up Vandana Hari, the founder and CEO of Vanda Insights and an Energy Connects columnist. Vandana, thank you so much for joining us back with Energy Connects, and it's great to be here at the splendid Hofburg Palace in Vienna for the OPEC International Seminar. What are your thoughts? And you have been seeing through this event from the first day.
Yes.
Let's talk about the theme of the event this year, charting pathways together. And His Excellency, the Secretary General, emphasized on the together part, the collective action.
Yes, indeed.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for having me, Chiranjeev. Always good to talk to you. So I can't think of a more important topic for global corporate leaders and policymakers to get our arms around today than energy. Securing the future of energy. And when I say the word secure, I mean it not just in terms of supply stability and affordability, which is important, of course, but equally securing it from a sustainability point of view. So I prefer to use that word than sort of decarbonization or clean or green or whatever, making it sustainable. I also can't think of a better organization than OPEC to bring together the thought leadership on this, because let's look at it. OPEC commemorating 65 years of existence. It's been around literally as the world economy has grown, flourished, fueled by oil and gas, right? So an organization that is in touch with consumers in global north, global south, developing countries, developed countries, every single day, following the markets, the oil markets from every perspective, not just what's moving prices, but what's moving supply, demand, how are the trade flows shifting. So this is an organization at the nub, at the heart of the global energy trade. So, absolutely kudos to OPEC. To His Excellency Haytham Al-Qais for bringing this together, for this great thought leadership. It was, we've both been here for 2 days now, and we were both earlier saying how they went in a blink of an eye, because there was so much to discuss, there was so much to absorb, so much information, analysis, points of view. We heard from delegates in Africa and South America, and they were asked how cohesive, how similar is Global South? And they made a good point that to some extent Global North is more, sort of has more similarities and what binds them together, whereas Global South is much more disparate, but they can, not desperate, but they can still learn from each other and they need to collaborate with each other. So we heard on a range of topics that are very, very pertinent to discuss, all the way from something that everybody wants to hear about, what is the outlook for the market in the short term, medium term, what's demand supply looking like, what prices might do, all the way to how this energy complex looks like 5 years out, 15 years out, and 25 years out, which is what sort of the crowning glory, in a way, was the OPEC long-term outlook, which came out today.
That's a great point. And energy poverty and energy security seem to be the dominating themes this year. What are the top 3 trends that you're hearing from the seminar this year?
So in that theme, right, I think what sort of emerged very clearly for me was that an absolute consensus in the room. And here I'm talking about delegates from the global south, north, doesn't matter, east, west, absolute consensus that energy transition has reached a very important pivotal point. So the world has become much more realistic and pragmatic. Basically what that tells me, and as somebody who identifies very closely with the so-called global south, is that the global south's voice has been heard. To me, I think that the next sort of step, a logical next move for OPEC would be now to carry this dialogue forward. So, okay, if we are all agreed that this has to be pragmatic and realistic, which means that oil and gas investment has to continue. Renewables will continue, maybe growing at double-digit rates, but from a very small base. But how do we ensure that adequate investment is going in each of these? I think that's the logical next stage of conversation, and that might be a little more difficult sort of conversation, but I think OPEC is taking us and the global dialogue on this in the right direction.
Like you said, I think some of these conversations are difficult but necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one of the other topics of discussion has also been about OPEC itself and OPEC Plus, which is almost 10 years now with its grouping. How do you see it in the next 10 years?
So personally, I feel all the sort of controversies and criticisms aside, and trust me, as a former journalist and as an analyst keeping a very open mind, I have taken all of them on board. But my personal view is, and especially looking back to the recent history, going back to 2020 and COVID and the demand shock and how OPEC Plus came together to very quickly cut back, slash production, keep the markets balanced. My personal view is that OPEC has, in terms of keeping the markets balanced, keeping them on an even keel, in an environment of growing geopolitical uncertainty, economic uncertainty, political uncertainty, played a very, very important role. Now, again, acknowledging that it is what I call a motley organization. Countries with obviously very fiercely nationalistic agendas as well, but also cooperating for the common good. But very different economic profiles, very different production profiles, very different costs of production, very different budgetary needs in terms of oil revenues. Putting all of that together and the tensions we hear about in the group from time to time. My personal view, having looked at these markets for 30 years and obviously as part of that, the evolution of OPEC and OPEC Plus, is that this organization, the way it has adapted. So it's nimble on a short-term reaction to markets basis, but it's also being very flexible on a more medium and long-term basis, as in what is that ethos that holds OPEC Plus together? It's not simply reacting to markets, but important conversations like we've had over the past 2 days, right? How do we ensure energy supply security? And mind you, this is an organization which is seen as oil producers group, and rightly so, it is an oil producers group. I didn't hear oil, I heard energy. Every single conversation was energy. So all of that put together tells me that this is an organization that is and could continue to play a very important role. I mean, I hope it does, because if it were to remove itself from that equation, I really can't see which organization can very neatly and effectively step into the breach. I mean, we, both of us, look at what's happening to multilateral organizations around the globe right now. Here's a sort of multilateral organization for you, which is bucking the trend. So a very important role, and I hope they'll continue playing that.
Absolutely, that's an excellent point. And finally, of course, we need to talk about the World Oil Outlook. An updated version of that was released this morning with some very interesting numbers. What are you hearing?
Yeah, so just on the sort of the highlights of it, the World Oil Outlook predicting as a base case for OPEC analysts, oil demand globally reaching 123 million barrels per day by 2050, which is about 20 million barrels per day more than what we consume today. That number is more or less in the ballpark of what I had expected. It's not too far from their previous predictions. There will be, for sure, there'll be disagreements and differences around that number. And we already know the whole range of highest to lowest, if you take into account other organizations, analysts, Wall Street banks. It's a big range. So here's my take on it. you can quarrel with it, quibble with it. You can say my number is quite different, but I think the message that is important and should not be lost is that oil and gas, importantly natural gas as well, will be needed for a long time to come. You could say, and personally I feel we are living in such a volatile and uncertain world where the pace of change has accelerated as well, that I personally feel a little diffident in projecting anything out to 2030, let alone 2050. So, but put that aside, the big picture, and I think there's no disagreements around that, is that oil and gas will be needed, because let's look at, we've for all the beauty of renewables, growing fast, they're growing from a very small base. There's intermittency issues, grid issues. All of that was discussed, right? In a very realistic manner and frank manner. Like, this is the good thing and this is the not so good thing. So scalability on non-fossil fuel energy is still a major issue. So investment in oil and gas is needed. And I hope that that's the message that the world takes from the oil outlook.
That's brilliantly put, Vandana. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you very much for joining this Energy Connects discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for watching, and you can get comprehensive coverage of the 9th OPEC International Seminar and more news from the energy industry at energyconnects.com. I will be back with more studio discussions. Stay tuned.